So why are we here? What is our purpose for being here? Maybe you're here this morning because you were brought by somebody. Maybe you're here for the cake. Fair enough, that's why I'm here as well. But maybe we're thinking about the bigger question of why do we exist? What am I here on this planet for? Are we more than just biological accidents? Because maybe that's all we are. Maybe we're just like the Cadbury's cream egg. Why we like the Cadbury's cream egg? Anybody know? We're here for a good time, not a long time. That's the tagline for cream eggs. Anyway, but if that is the case, that we're actually just here not for a long time. We're here to make the most of whatever the time we have. Well, then, if that's what we're here, then why should we need to help other people? Why should we help the poor? Why should we help people affected by warfare, the disabled, the less fortunate? Why should we be concerned about other people if they're also just accidents of biology? And that is the most they'll ever amount to. So what's the point in having any moral values at all? So you see, it's a really big question. What is the purpose of everything? Are we put here for a purpose? Because answering that question really affects how we go about life and our day to day, but also for the big picture. So our answer is important to this question. And we're going to give it a good go. And the next few minutes, we're going to dig deep and see if there's really pointers that we can look at that give us a general kind of sense of, yes, well, maybe there might be purpose to life. So this asking questions of why, if we just look around, like it's been around, people have been asking this question, why are we here, for a long time. It's evident in pop culture. Hair, the musical, I don't know if you heard of that musical, has a quote saying, "Why do I live? Why do I die? Where do I go? Why do I die?" So they're lyrics of a song from a musical. Another song you might have heard, "The world's still spinning round, I don't know why," from the band Oasis in the 90s. Deep, thoughtful lyrics there. Why is the world still spinning? Why are we put here? What's the point in everything? So that question has been around in pop culture. It also, we see it in everyday people. Okay, we end up asking that question ourselves. Why? What's the point? What's the point of everything? What is the point of life? Because you know what? I just can't take any much of it anymore. I'm done with life. It's too much of a burden for me. And how are you, Sean? Take a seat there. No problem. What's the point of life? Because I can't take any much more. You know, what is the answer then? What is the answer when we come to the end of ourselves and life is just difficult? Is the answer just we just need to change our mood? Is that really it? You know, we can take some medication, take some drugs to help us feel better. Well, those answers don't really go away, do they, when that's the case? Well, maybe the purpose of life then is to be successful. Maybe that's what we need to pursue in our life. Success. Maybe we need to be financially free. Surely that's got to be it. You know, when we get to that point where there's just no more pressures anymore, surely at the core of all our pressures is not having enough money. And when we get there, we'll discover a level of enjoyment that we haven't known before. Well, consider this quote by an actor called Jim Carrey, a Hollywood actor. He says, "I hope everybody could get rich and famous and will have everything they ever dreamed of so that they will know it's not the answer." It's not the answer. And he himself has experienced that. Many, many high achievers in the world underline this point over and over again, that finding ultimate meaning and purpose in life is not a matter of your health. It's not a matter of your success, your wealth, your popularity, or the amount of pleasure you derive from life. Yes, those things can drive you to make decisions and can characterize your life, but the pursuit of them, and whether you get them or not, doesn't mean you've discovered the purpose of life or not. How could that make sense? The purpose is a matter of bank balance or power. There's no sense in that because it's just, where's the equality in that? Well, continuing to toy with the idea that there just might be a purpose to life, and we've got to try and think and look for clues as to what it is. Where else do we look for to try and establish what the purpose of life is? Richard Dawkins is a popular scientist. Said this. He says, "I think science really has fulfilled the need that religion did in the past of explaining things, explaining why we are here, what is the origin of life, where did the world come from, what life is all about. Science has the answers. Science has the answers." Well, not everything a scientist says is a scientific statement. And you can always find another scientist who disagrees with one scientist, particularly this guy in particular. There are no experiments that you can do such that the conclusion of your experiment is, therefore, this is our purpose in life. Science can't do that. It can't explain the origin of life. Best it can do is offer an educated guess. Science can't explain the world's existence. It goes way beyond the facts when it tries to. But just because it can't lead you to a purpose doesn't mean that there isn't one there. Science highlights its own limitations of what questions it can answer. Now, I'm not being anti-scientist because I really like science. I've done a lot of it in my time. I have a degree in it. I make my living by it. True science relies on observation and experiment, and doing exactly that has led to great benefits for society and some not so great benefits. But it can't address the meaning of life. It simply just can't tell us why we are people. It can't tell us why we are persons, not just a bag of bones, and not just physical objects. It can't explain why my mind exists in the way it does. And it simply can't explain evil and ethical principles. It can't do it. So as powerful as science is and as good as it is, we can't look to it specifically to answer a question. Does life have any purpose? Well, where else can we look to? Well, maybe we're to look out there, out in space. When was the last time you gave space a good owl mulling over? It's pretty mind-boggling. Here's some mad space facts for you all. Did you know the sun is 1 million times the size of the Earth? 1 million. Did you know that the current estimate is that there's between 100 and 200 billion galaxies in the universe, each containing billions of stars? Like, we can't get our minds around that. We can say those numbers, I can say those numbers in my mouth, but I've no experience of that reality, even though that literally is our reality. 200 years ago, we thought it was just the Milky Way that was there. Now we know a lot more. And maybe this advancement of cosmology is getting us closer to discovering what our purpose is. It's actually helping us, getting us to a place as humans and finding out what we're here for. 300 years ago, there was a German mathematician, and he asked, why is there something rather than nothing? Why is all that there instead of nothing? Why is all this here? And the answer to that question points to other stuff that should help us in our question of finding out if there is a purpose of life. Why is the universe absolutely teeming with massive planets and stars? And how did it all get there? And was it always there? Or was there a time when there was nothing? These are very live questions. Maybe you've seen the images provided by the Webb telescope. Absolutely incredible. The one I had on the slide there beforehand is from that telescope. So it's letting us see things in a new way. It's also bringing about lots of debate about standard assumptions about like redshift and the Big Bang. But as one guy, professor of physics in MIT, says, the Big Bang theory says nothing about what banged, why it banged, or what happened before it banged. So even though we're still advancing in our understanding of space, we're still plagued with the big questions of how and why. How and why. But one thing is for sure, definitely for sure, that we are here, aren't we? Are we here? Pinch yourself this morning. Is this real? Yeah, we're not just in the matrix. We are here, we exist, and that's a miracle. Because it shows that our universe is not just any kind of universe. It's very specially fine-tuned arrangement of a universe. One British physicist says, it's hard to resist the impression that the present structure of the universe has been rather carefully thought out. Our solar system is often referred to as the Goldilocks zone. Why the Goldilocks zone? Because things are not too cold and they're not too hot. They're just right for life to exist on Earth. If things were off even by a fraction, we couldn't exist. But we do. And everything is in the right proportion to each other. And we have to ask, could this really all be accidental? Is it all a freak chance of probability? If that's the case, well, it defies the odds of probability. And I heard even Dawkins himself say in a podcast recently that this is the strongest argument from physics, that there is a God there. But what has this got to do with our question? It's everything. It's got everything to do with our question, because if we're here by chance, there's no meaning to anything. But if we're not here by chance, that means us being here has some significance. There's a significance to our existence. And if we're not here by chance, then the best explanation we have surely is that there's a powerful God who has put us here and put the universe in place. And as we look out, we get this sense of an infinite power. Now you may say that's very far out for a Saturday morning. Well, it's kind of less far out than thinking that all this actually came from nothing. In fact, everything else makes sense if we accept this fact that there is a God. C.S. Lewis, here's a great quote from C.S. Lewis. He says, I believe in God like I believe in the sun, not because I can see the sun, but because of it all things are seen. I believe in the sun, not because I can look directly at the sun, but because the sun lights up everything else. And that's why I believe in it. So, looking outward, we see clues of an intelligent and purposeful design in the universe and everything in it. So my point is, considering the universe nudges us in a direction towards an infinite God. Where else can we look? I think there's evidence closer to hand to think about ourselves. Give you 4 brief reasons why we as humans stand out. Our physical makeup. We have trillions of cells inside us, trillions. And they all know exactly what to do. They do the right thing at the right time. Our bodies are just so intricate. And they work. I don't know how I'm working right now, but I'm working. So we're intricate. Secondly, we are conscious. We are conscious and we are self-conscious. We have a sense of self that there is no natural way to explain. In one sense, like literally, we're no different than the stones on the ground outside. In one sense, we're just a bunch of matter. But the stones don't put meaning or assume meaning in everything they do. They're not even aware of themselves. We want to know about things. We're inquisitive. Animals don't care. We are curious about the world we live in and curious about ourselves. So we have this consciousness about us that is interesting to know. Thirdly, beauty. We have an aesthetic dimension. We just take note of things. We notice things, forms, expressions. We judge the worth of things that we see and we hear. For example, when we hear a song or a painting, I've told the story before when I was at Dunleary Pier a few years ago. I was just walking down the pier and some guy was selling his art, and I saw one of his paintings and my eyes were locked and I couldn't stop looking at it, and it stopped me in my tracks, and I got a sense that is a beautiful painting that I really enjoyed. We're endlessly creative in that way, and we always find new ways to express ourselves. If the universe has no purpose, then the universal experience of being moved by works of music or great acts of human creativity, that's hard to explain. How do you explain that? What is the purpose of being moved by creativity? We notice beauty and it moves us. Why? Fourthly, we have a moral dimension. There's a moral dimension to us. Yes, we may differ on how far right and wrong differ from each other, or to the limit of what we think society, for instance, should have as a crime and that type of thing. But we still have that capacity. We know we ought to behave in certain ways. when we ought not to behave in other ways. Okay? And we have this moral law. So 4 other things to consider about ourselves that make us think there must be something else going on here. We think in terms of moral law, we find things beautiful, we're self-conscious, and we have these amazing bodies. All of those are other signposts to God. And so that's where we are in our journey, right? In this little few minutes to think about what is the purpose of life, you know. Thinking about all these things, thinking about science, thinking about the universe, thinking about ourselves. It's led us to think that maybe, you know what, maybe there are signposts pointing us towards an infinite creator. So perhaps that's where it is. Maybe it's in this God where we will find our purpose. And now, as we begin to close, we must switch gears a little bit. Because what we've been doing has actually just been following the Bible's prescription of how we're meant to think. The Bible tells us that the heavens declare the glory of God, which means when we look out and just consider the world, it's telling us something. It's proclaiming us something of God. Opening up our eyes is meant to get us to think in a general way towards a creator. So that's where we are, but then the Bible takes us further than that. The Bible takes us to the very person of God throughout the pages of this book. And about 400 years ago, a group of lads came together and they made a list of 107 questions and answers that the Bible answers about us and God. And the first question that they had, and they got their answer from the Bible, was this. First question was, what is the chief end of man? The chief end of man. As in, what's the purpose of man? And their answer was, man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. And that is what the Bible says our purpose to life is. To glorify God and enjoy him forever. And so to finish, I just want to say 3 short things about that statement to finish. So firstly, we need to clarify who God is. Because there are many counterfeit gods out there. Just like you can have real currency, there's also fake money out there. But there's only one real living God. And he is the God of this book. And this book tells us about him. And he is the one who made you. And everything that we were talking about earlier on in the universe, he made that as well. And the billions of galaxies we were talking about, he made them. And how did he make them? The Bible tells us he spoke them into existence. And he's been active in human history ever since he made us, creating a people group for himself out of everyone that he's made. And the Bible is a record of that, right from page 1. He also sent the person of his son, whose name was Jesus, into the world as a man. So God came as a man who lived for 30-odd years. He was crucified, he died, he rose from the dead 3 days later, and that was Jesus. And after that, he sent the person of the Spirit into the world to bring the hearts of many to Jesus and to let them know who he was so that they can have him as their king. That is the God of the Bible. That is the triune God that the Bible speaks about. And it's him we're meant to glorify. Secondly, our purpose in life then is to glorify him. Now, what does that mean? I don't know, have you noticed your ability to be about something? Just like Brian in the video was telling us about like all that he's done in his life, and he took a massive interest in his creative skills and finding out about spiritual things. So what is it that kind of characterizes your kind of story arc throughout your life? What is there something that's been like at the center of what you do? Maybe it's you're just constantly trying to hone a skill, or maybe it's just that one mission in life that you've always been aiming for. And when you're doing those things, everything else just automatically takes a back seat. And you're not even thinking about it. People I know that I haven't seen in a while from back in the day, they always ask me about, let's say, music. How's music going for you these days? Because they know that, it was a big part of my life in previous times. So what is it about that you can say, yeah, there's actually one thing in my life that I've always chased after? The Bible calls that worship. And we are meant to worship God above everything else. But what do we do instead? We just turn our way to other things. And our life becomes orientated around lesser things than God himself. So to really find our purpose, we have to turn to God and away from all those other things and towards him. When Jesus was teaching about the prodigal son, maybe you've heard that story. There was a son who he told a story about a son who took his father's inheritance early and just went away and squandered it. But the phrase Jesus used for this turning in the Bible is this: the son came to his senses. Came to his senses. And Brian, his experience was the very same. I mean, he talked about everything just crashing down at one point. So when we realize who God is and who we are in comparison, and what sets him apart from everything else in our life, and even despite the way we've been and not glorifying God with our life, when we realize that he's there with open arms, waiting for us, when we realize that moment and we come to our senses and we turn to God, that's when we begin to glorify God. And that's what he's waiting for everyone who's ever lived to do, to come to him. So we glorify God by just being about him and being overcome by him and prefer him than everything else in our life. Lastly then, chief purpose of man is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. What does that mean? Well, life is enjoyed to the full when it's spent living in relationship with that God who made you. If you have a friend who you enjoy spending time with, maybe it's a spouse or a friend, a mate, or even a child that you have who you just love. And, if I ask you to tell me about them, you tell me about them. And all about what makes them them. I could tell you about my kids and why they crack me up. Now, I'd leave out the bad bits that make me and Catherine tear our hair out, or at least make me tear my hair out. But, with life with God, when we find out about how good God is, that there's no bad with him, the bad is actually with us, and he gives that bad to his son on the cross. And as we read more and more of his book, we're not just learning information, it's not just academics, we're actually learning about him and why it's so good to have him as our Lord God and to glorify him forever. Well, that then is our purpose. And that is a daily, a weekly, and yearly habit. And so you can enjoy God in your daily experiences. You can enjoy God as you go to work. You can enjoy God as you spend time with family and friends, as you think about life. God is with you in that. And he's giving you, he's telling you how all these things will come to being because he's given you these things. He's gifted you with this amazing gift of life. And when you begin to reflect on that, you begin to glorify him and say, thank you, Lord, this is amazing. You are a good God. And I can trust in you. And I know that what you're doing in the world is for the benefit of human history and for the good of his glorification. And so that is your purpose. That is the answer to this question. That is your purpose. That's why you've been made. You've been made to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Do not rule out that there is a God who is exactly who you've been made to live for. I'm trying to answer this question. Do not rule it out. Christianity has that message to its core, and it affects every area of our life, and it literally changes everything. It changes work, it changes how you love people, it gives us perspective beyond ourselves. It helps us stop thinking about ourselves and be concerned with other people and him. Will you open yourself up to him, and will you let him lead you to the purposes that he has for you, because that is what you've been made for. So, thank you for your attention on that. And just to finish off our our time here aside before we go get some coffee. Just to say that this was number 3 in our series of What's the Story. The 4th one is next Friday at 7:30, where we're answering the question, is there hope in the face of death? Can we have hope in the face of death? We are a church here, Shankill Bible Church, and we've got different things going on. And we are hoping to launch, after this What's the Story campaign, a Christianity Explored course where we just consider the claims of Christ and look at the Bible together, trying to figure out and see what Jesus can mean for us. If you're interested in that, come and talk to us, or there's a sign-up sheet outside as well. You can put your name, your contact details on. And what else are we up to? Yeah, next things that are coming up soon for children. We have a life party Tuesday, 1st of November, in a few weeks for primary school aged children. And as I said, we're a church here, and we meet every Sunday at 9:30 for the children, and in our own service at 10:15. And we also have youth group activity during the week for age 10 to 12. If you have any children that are of age, more than welcome to that. So, thank you for your attention. Let's go and have some tea and coffee, some cakes, and some chat. And we'll talk to you then.